Minimum wage earners to get a 3.75% increase in their wages on July 1, on top of the Stage 3 tax cuts. Almost half of all Australians struggle to make loan repayments, yet many don't ask for help. And Nvidia announces a new superchip before it's even sent the first consignment of its previous superchip. Welcome to Fear and Greed, daily business news for people who make their own decisions. It is Tuesday, the 4th of June, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, big show coming up. Afterwards, you have an interview with Tim Lawless, Research Director at CoreLogic.
It is a fantastic chat about all the major property markets, capital cities, regions. We talk about why Melbourne is so weak, what Sydney's doing, why Perth, Brisbane, Adelaide are so strong, what's going on in Hobart, what's going on in the regions. It's just it's a deep dive into the numbers that we talk about all the time with Tim. No one knows the market better than Tim Lawless, that's for sure. And it's just a fantastic chat about exactly what's happening in each of those markets.
Oh, absolutely. And if you listen to this one interview, you will automatically be prepared for any barbecues you go to on the weekend in order just to rattle off facts about every housing market in the country. Yep. And you will sound like an expert.
Yeah, I mean, people won't hang around with you.
Yeah. No, Sean, you don't need friends when you got facts. That's what I always say.
True.
It is worth sticking around for. It's coming up a bit later on. The main story this morning, though, Sean, the Fair Work Commission has awarded a 3.75% pay rise to 2.6 million minimum wage and award-reliant workers.
In its annual wage decision, the Commission full bench, headed by President Adam Hatcher, said the increase factored in cost of living pressures felt by households. But he said the bench did not want to award an increase significantly above inflation, and the 3.75% rise factored in the July 1 tax cuts and the superannuation guarantee increase. The amount is slightly above the inflation rate, and in dollar terms, the lowest paid workers will receive $33.10 more a week. That makes the minimum wage $915.90 a week. The decision directly or indirectly affects about 25% of the workforce, including those whose wages are set by industry awards. Mr. Hatcher said the increase was consistent with inflation returning to below 3% by 2025. The ACTU had sought a 5% pay rise, while employer groups sought to limit the increase to no more than 2.8%. The full bench also deferred an ACTU claim for a 4% pay rise in female-dominated industries. This is on top of the increase in the minimum wage. The Fair Work Commission will undertake a study to address gender undervaluation. This is to look at inequity in many female-dominated industries, such as early childhood education and care workers, disability home care workers, those working in other social and community services, dental assistants, medical technicians, psychologists, and other health professionals and pharmacists.
Sean, a decision like this can often be quite controversial. What was the reaction like yesterday?
It was mixed, as you would expect, but generally, I think most people welcomed it. In fact, it was probably met with more applause than any of these decisions in recent times. The federal government has always pushed for an increase at least in line with inflation. That happened. Economists predicted that anything more than 4% would be inflationary. That didn't happen. COSBOA was pretty quickly out of the box. It said 3.75% on top of last year's 5.75% was putting pressure on its membership. It was particularly harsh for industries like hospitality, retail and services because labour costs make up half of overall operating costs. The Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which is an employer group, said the increase tests the acceptable limits for business but shouldn't drive up inflation. I reckon that's a tick of approval. The ACTU worked some numbers and said entry-level retail or hospitality workers will be about $2,600 a year better off after taking into account the Fair Work Commission ruling and, of course, the Stage 3 tax cuts. They kick in on July 1. All taxpayers will get a tax cut from that time. So it's actually quite a boost to take-home pay from July 1.
We did a little video, Sean, on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook yesterday. Follow Fear and Greed on all of those platforms and you'll see our videos that we put out. We try to do them pretty much every day. And this one got quite a reaction on TikTok in particular. Basically, people digesting, reacting to the decision. And I would say the initial response was mixed. There's a lot of people that will never quite be satisfied, I suspect, with any decision along these lines. But you are right. Generally, the decision seems to have been met with a reasonable amount of positivity.
Now, Michael, you're going to have to tell the story about one of the first ones you got. who equated the $33.
That's right. Well, this would be almost my favourite comment so far. Someone celebrating, saying $33 a week, which is what it essentially equates to. They used an expletive. I really shouldn't use it on here because this is a family podcast. But they said, yeah, that's like 2 Zinger boxes, which I just love. They have equated the increase in the minimum wage to what it will buy at KFC, which I just thought that's a very Australian thing to do.
It was pretty funny, yes.
It's very good. All right, local markets, what happened yesterday?
It's a pretty good day for the market, with the S&P ASX 200 closing up nearly 1% to 7,761 points. Financials, utilities and property stocks did best, while the tech and telco indices went backwards. It was a day for the banks. Westpac closed up more than 2%. Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank and ANZ all jumped more than 1%. Goodman Group was good. It was 2% higher, while WasteTech Global was down 1.5%. The big miners were mixed, while the insurers did well. QBE jumped 2.3%, IAG rose 1.5%, and Suncorp finished 1% higher. In corporate news, New Zealand dairy group Synlat's share price fell more than 2% after it warned of ongoing weak trading conditions and a risk it's unlikely to meet 3 of its current banking covenants at the end of next month. And APM Human Services closed up 10%. It's done a deal to be bought by Chicago's Madison Dearborn Partners.
And Sean, there's a bit happening on international markets.
Sure is. OPEC Plus members have agreed to extend cuts in oil production, in some cases to the end of next year, as they battle to shore up prices amid weak global demand and increased supply from other parts of the world. At its latest biannual meeting, the cartel conceded that it had no room yet to change stance on output cuts that began in November 2022, pledging to keep more than 3 million barrels a day of crude off the market until the end of next year. Why do we care about that, Michael? Well, that basically puts a floor on petrol prices. At the moment, they're reasonably cheap along the East Coast, not so cheap on the West Coast. What OPEC has come out and done, though, is say we're going to not put too much oil into the market. Therefore, petrol prices, they're not going to get much lower than what they are now for the foreseeable future anyway. There was good economic news out of China, with the measure of the manufacturing sector hitting a near 2-year high. There has now been 4 months of growth on the factory floor in China. In currency markets, the Aussie dollar is trading around 66.5 US cents, while cryptocurrencies remain pretty strong. Bitcoin's worth $68,000 a unit.
Sean, you used a word when you were talking about OPEC Plus. It's just one of those words that's so confusing. When you say that OPEC Plus held its biannual meeting, which of course means that they meet twice a year. And this is one of those things that I need to Google it. I need to check every single time. Is it biannual, being twice a year, or biennial, which is every 2 years?
Yes. No, I know exactly what you mean, because whenever I see that word, it's exactly the same. The A gives it away, like annual, so it's twice annual, and biennial. But I know exactly what you mean. I have to look twice all the time.
Yeah, maybe we should start a campaign to have that changed permanently. I don't know who you campaign. Do you campaign the dictionary?
Oxford Dictionary or somewhere? Yeah, mate.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's a grassroots campaign, Sean. I don't know whether it'll catch on.
No.
Maybe we'll use the newsletter. Perfect time to plug the newsletter. Head along to fearandgreed.com.au, put your email address in, and you will get the Fear and Greed newsletter. It comes out tomorrow morning, mid-morning, all of Sean's thoughts on a whole bunch of big business stories, everything that's happened in the last week that you've heard the facts. Now get Sean's views on it. I'm talking about you like you're not even here, Sean.
I'm in the room.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, head along to fearandgreed.com.au, put your email address in, and you'll get it in the morning. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Treasury Secretary Stephen Kennedy yesterday gave a solid defence of the tax system, saying he's quite comfortable with the current corporate tax rate and Australia's reliance on income and company tax rates.
Mr. Kennedy said in light of current circumstances, the company tax rate is appropriate. He also wouldn't be drawn on whether last month's budget was expansionary or contractionary, but said the budget was consistent with inflation returning to target. Ever the diplomat, Mr. Kennedy. The Treasury Secretary was in front of Senate estimates. He said there's a range of factors contributing to the shortage of housing, including COVID-19 related bottlenecks and high inflation. Not helping has been a lack of essential infrastructure in some greenfield sites and a shortage of skilled labour. Mr. Kennedy also warned that the March quarter economic growth figure due out tomorrow will be very weak.
And just before we leave Canberra, Sean, former Treasurer Josh Frydenberg has scotched speculation about his return to federal parliament at the next election.
Mr. Frydenberg said he's backing Amelia Hamer, the current Liberal Party candidate for his old seat of Kooyong. Mr. Frydenberg lost the 2022 poll to Teal independent Monique Ryan. At the moment, at least, he's not interested. I do just want to point out another great word that you used there, and you know what it is. Scotched.
Scotched. Yeah, it's such a rich word, isn't it? You can almost taste it.
Oh, well, you can. That's right.
And call me a cynic here, Sean, but do you just reckon that maybe Josh Frydenberg didn't quite get the support, the initial rush of support that he was hoping for, and now he goes, no, never even considered it?
Yeah. He didn't exactly rush out to say no, because this was around on Sunday afternoon. It took him a good 24 hours or so before he came out and said, yeah, I'm not going to do it. He heard a few voices first.
Yeah, just had to run it up the flagpole first. All right. Sean, the federal government has ordered some offshore shareholders of rare earths hopeful Northern Minerals to sell down their stakes because it isn't in the national interest.
This is fascinating, and I've got to say the Financial Review did a great job explaining this story to me, so all credit to them on this story. Northern Minerals mines two little-known minerals. One's called dysprosium, the other terbium. They're used in the production of high-performance magnets, batteries, and defence equipment. I'd never heard of them.
It does sound like you made them up.
I'm sure they're on the periodic table. Didn't ever do chemistry. Anyway, dysprosium and terbium. Northern Minerals mines them. Chinese businessman Wu Tao bought a 9.9% stake in the company, then a couple of years ago tried to lift that to 19.9%. Tao is a bigwig in the Chinese rare earths world. When he tried to go to 19.9%, the Foreign Investment Review Board said, we're not going to allow that. Now, Mr. Tao is accused of orchestrating the buying of shares in the company via a series of related entities and parties. When the buying began late last year, the then CEO of Northern Minerals, a guy called Nick Curtis, thought, that's a bit unusual. He reported that to the Foreign Investment Review Board. Soon after he reported the buying to FIRB, shareholders then attempted to remove him as a director. Mr. Curtis resigned a week ago, not wanting to go through that process of the extraordinary general meeting. Now, Federal Treasurer Jim Chalmers has ordered one of the associated companies, named Yaxiao, to reduce its stake from 9.8% to 8.5%. Four other apparently associated shareholders have been told to reduce their stakes combined to about 9%. Very, very unusual for disposal orders like that to happen in commercial matters. The implication is that Chalmers has used his power to prevent a surreptitious attempt by Chinese interests related to Wu Tao to grab control of the promising Aussie miner. Great little tale.
That's got all the makings of a movie. I mean, probably a somewhat, honestly, quite a dull movie, but a movie. like it's got kind of.
It may not be top 10.
Yeah, maybe not, but it's got terbium and dysprosium and kind of.
Where can you go wrong?
Foreign interests. Oh, goodness me. I'm selling it to myself here, Sean. Now, the chief executive of Smiggle has jumped ship and will run fast fashion jewelry chain Lovisa.
Well, see, that last story was like intrigue in the mining industry. This is intrigue in the retail sector.
Ooh.
Because in the retail world, there are some very high profile, very rich players. This story is about two of those people. One of them is Solomon Lew, who controls Premier Investments, the owner of Smiggle. The other one is Brett Blundy, the person who launched Lovisa. Now, John Cheston, currently at Smiggle, will take over at Lovisa. So he's gone from the Lew camp to the Blundy camp. Not long ago, Mark McGuinness, who was expected to take the top job at Myer, he used to be at David Jones. Myer, of course, is another Solomon Lew company. Well, he opted to go and work for Mr. Blundy's empire. So two of them now have gone to Mr. Blundy's empire. All this is happening as Premier looks to spin off Smiggle and Peter Alexander, the pyjama brand, onto the stock exchange. Add to the story the fact that the guy leaving Smiggle, the guy being replaced, Victor Herrero, is the second highest paid CEO on the ASX. Did you understand? Did you understand all that, Michael, or not?
I need. It feels like Game of Thrones. I actually
It
need
is
I need a little kind of family
a
tree
map.
and stuff. But I
Yes.
am following you. Yes.
Yes. Well, shareholders certainly understood it because Lovisa closed down 11% yesterday, but Premier also finished down 4%. It was just a sell-off in both of them. Anyway, fascinating to see that the battle between the billionaires, perhaps we can put it that way.
Yeah, that is a great story. Now, new research from the corporate watchdog shows that 5.8 million Australians have struggled to make loan and debt repayments in the past 12 months. That is huge.
That's nearly half the population with a debt. The top reasons people fall into debt are cost of living pressures, reduced income, and unexpected expenses. Yet, 30% of Australians, 1 in 3, say they wouldn't seek hardship assistance arrangements from their lender or credit provider. In fact, they'd rather sell stuff or get a second job or something or other. The main reasons people don't seek help from their lender, according to the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, is anxiety and stress, shame or embarrassment, lack of awareness, or not knowing where to go for help. The research is part of ASIC's Just Ask Hardship Help is Available campaign, basically telling people if you are struggling, ring your lender, visit your lender, email your lender, call your lender, do whatever you want, but just get in touch with them. And I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, absolutely. Sean, the Super Members Council of Australia is calling for an end to the ban on older Australians receiving contributions into retirement phase super accounts. They're arguing that it penalises those dipping back into the workforce later in life.
Yeah, this is going to get very interesting in the next few years. The industry super lobby group wants the federal government to lift the rule that forces working retirees, people over the age of 65 who are working, to open a separate accumulation account for their super contributions to go into. Under the current rule, working retirees end up paying 2 sets of account fees, often slugged with more taxes because they've got the one that they used until they were 65, and then now they've got this other one that they've got to use after they're 65. It comes as new research shows 1 in 4 Australians continue to work into their early 70s, and the retirement of 2.5 million baby boomers over the next decade will flood the retiree pool. Many of them will want to work again. We don't need all these extra accounts. The lobby group made the call yesterday as it announced its new chair, and Sherry AO will take over from interim chair Nicola Roxon, according to a report in The Australian.
Finally, Sean, before we get to international news, well, I suppose it actually almost neatly straddles international news, doesn't it? Because he's not an Australian citizen anymore. Rupert Murdoch has married for the 5th time, tying the knot with retired molecular biologist Elena Zukova.
The 93-year-old Murdoch married the 67-year-old Zukova at his Californian vineyard. Last year, Mr. Murdoch was briefly engaged to a former police chaplain. Prior to that, he was married to former model Jerry Hall for 6 years. Anyway, good luck to Mr. Murdoch and Ms. Zukova.
Yeah, indeed. Turning to international news now. South Africa's African National Congress has begun talks with rivals to form a government following its worst performance since Nelson Mandela led it to power at the end of apartheid in 1994.
The ANC obtained 159 of the 400 seats in the National Assembly in the May 29 elections, a precipitous decline from the 230 seats President Cyril Ramaphosa's party won 5 years ago. The ANC's slump comes after years of poor economic management and corruption. Now, South Africa has one of the world's highest unemployment rates and weak growth, according to Bloomberg. The ANC is now likely to be forced to rely on cooperation from rivals if it is to retain power. The Democratic Alliance scored 87 seats. That'll mean it's the main opposition party. Interestingly, a party led by a former ANC leader and national president, Jacob Zuma, was third. It won 58 seats just 6 months after its launch. Now, the ANC kicked Zuma out of office after 9 scandal-tainted years. Maybe the ANC will have to do a deal with their former leader. Also, Mexico went to the polls, and the early polling results suggest that Mexico, for the first time, has a female president. Claudia Sheinbaum looks to have won the presidency. She's a close ally to Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who has been in power for quite a few years. He wasn't allowed to run again. Anyway, Mexico has its first female president.
Goodness me, there's a few elections going on.
Yeah, remember at the beginning of the year we did a story where I'm trying to think that 40% of the world's population was voting this year?
That's a very good point.
It's phenomenal because Indonesia, India, Mexico, the United States, of course, South Africa, these Bangladesh, UK, Actually, in the UK, yeah. Like, it's amazing these hugely populous nations going to the polls.
Yeah.
Interesting.
It's a very, very, very big year for democracy, Sean.
It is a very big year for democracy, Michael.
Finally, Nvidia announced the next generation of its artificial intelligence processors over the weekend, less than 3 months after its most recent launch.
Yeah, so Chief Executive Jensen Huang unveiled Rubin, the successor to its Blackwell chips for data centers. Now, the Blackwell chips were announced in March. They're in production, though none have yet been shipped. So Nvidia has announced the newest chip before the older chip has even left the factory. Production cycle. I get being first to market, but really? Maybe, is it just like, oops, we made a mistake on those other ones, so we're just going to update them and call them something different?
Or doesn't it just show just the incredible speed at which it's moving, that they suddenly go, oh my God, we've got another one ready to go. Quick, get it out there. I was just looking to see who it was named after, because the Rubin is an interesting name.
Yeah.
It was named after an astronomer, Vera
right?
Rubin, who made, according to Google, Sean, made significant contributions to our understanding of dark matter in the universe and conducted pioneering work on galaxy rotation rates.
Oh, something I'm very interested in. Galaxy rotation rates.
See, the thing, at least I pretend to be interested in what you say sometimes. You just kind of straight out just be sarcastic and a little bit snide.
Well, no, but kind of along these lines, say, Jensen Huang said a new computer age is starting. He was talking about that when he unveiled these new chips. He's also done new AI chip deals with PC makers. The issue here, Rubin is much more, so Rubin as opposed to Blackwell, is more efficient than previous chips. And apparently the big promise from Nvidia is that they will improve power efficiency, the new Rubin chip. Energy efficiency is becoming much more important because the expansion of AI data centers is putting huge strain on energy grids all over the place. And so apparently the big change between Blackwell and Rubin is its energy efficiency. There you go, which is interesting because that's all about black matter. No idea whether that's true, but just thought I'd throw it in.
Yeah, and it ties neatly to the galaxy rotation rate, which is actually quite fast.
Well, it's very efficient.
There you go. We have successfully found a link, that's and right. I suspect we finished the show talking absolute nonsense, Sean.
Yes, I think so.
You know who's not talking nonsense? Tim Lawless, Research Director at CoreLogic, and your guest today on the Fear and Greed Daily Interview.
Yes, all about housing prices, what's happening in the capital cities and the regions. Great chat.
Yeah, it's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au, which is where you can sign up for the Fear and Greed newsletter out tomorrow. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Mike. Before I go, though, Michael, I've got to have a quick shout out to my mate Watto, Greg Watson. He sent me a photo over the weekend. He lives on the Central Coast in New South Wales of Chiquitos on sale, $1.50.
That's right, because last week you admitted that Chiquitos are the things that you always buy when you go into a convenience store and a petrol station, because, of course, we talked about the fact that convenience stores and petrol stations are booming because of what people are buying apart from petrol. And you said that you're basically keeping 7-Eleven afloat because of your obsession with Chiquitos.
Chiquitos. So he sent me a photo. Watto sent me a photo, half price, $1.25 at Woolies Chiquitos.
And did you go out and buy some?
Absolutely.
You must be the only person in the world who's going out and stocking up on Chiquitos. Anyway, thank you, Sean. It is Tuesday, the 4th of June, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, TikTok and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed. Have a great day.